All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking something incredibly fascinating called the dual income illusion. And more importantly, we're going to build a step-by-step guide to finding your financial margin. You know, for decades, we've basically been sold this idea that having two incomes automatically equals wealth. It just makes sense, right? But as you'll see, the actual data tells a completely backward story. Let's look at why.
So meet Nico and Hazel. Together, they pull in $172,000 a year. Hazel makes 82 grand in marketing and Nico makes 90 grand in IT. Now, making this kind of money plants them firmly in the top 25% of American households. I mean, they are doing everything right by modern standards. They've got the two careers, the two cars, the really nice house in the suburbs. On paper, and definitely on their tax returns, they look rich.
But here is the massive disconnect. On the 28th of every single month, Nico sits down at the kitchen table, opens up his banking app, and sees exactly $43 left in checking. That's it, 43 bucks. The massive mortgage cleared, daycare took its huge cut, the two car payments hit, insurance, groceries, and suddenly their top-tier, top 25% income has literally evaporated before the month is even over. They share that specific quiet panic of people who genuinely just do not understand how they are still this broke. Which brings us to the million-dollar question. How exactly does a household making top-tier money end up living paycheck to paycheck? Seriously, how do you earn at six-figure levels but feel like you're constantly drowning? Well, to understand the trap Nico and Hazel are in, we have to rewind a bit and look at how the rules of the game completely shifted right beneath our feet.
Let's compare two different generational snapshots to really put this in perspective. Over here, we have Tom and Susan in 1973. Tom works one job, making the inflation-adjusted equivalent of about $78,400, and Susan stays home. Their fixed costs, the mortgage, one car insurance, they sit around $42,000. So they have over 36 grand left for discretionary spending. Now look at Justin and Kimberly from the 2000s. They both work, earning a combined 75% more than Tom, but check out their fixed costs. They skyrocketed to over 50 grand. So despite a massive jump in gross income, the modern dual income couple actually ended up with less leftover spending money than the single income guy in 1973 who was fixing his own carburetor on the weekends.
Now, I know it's incredibly tempting to blame all of this on modern lifestyle creep. We've all heard it, right? But as outlined in Harvard bankruptcy law professor Elizabeth Warren's data-driven book, The Two-Income Trap, this is absolutely not about avocado toast or upgrading your iPhone every year. In fact, when adjusted for inflation, families today actually spend less on clothing, less on appliances, and less on food than families did 50 years ago. The squeeze didn't come from frivolous spending. It came from the absolute non-negotiables. Okay, so the real trap started with a massive housing arms race. Back in 1970, the median home cost 2.4 times a family's income. Today, it's 6.1 times. And you might be wondering, why the huge jump? Well, banks changed their lending rules to allow couples to borrow against both incomes. Think about it. When Tom bid on a house in the 90s with just one income, he had a very strict ceiling. But when Justin and Kimberly showed up with two incomes, the bank basically let them borrow double. And when every single family in the bidding pool can suddenly borrow twice as much, well, housing prices just go up until both incomes are literally required just to win the auction. Two income households accidentally bid each other right into a corner.
And guys, this bidding war extends directly to education. Dual-income families are essentially paying a massive premium on houses just to get access to decent public schools. Studies actually show that homes near high-scoring schools cost, on average, anywhere from $25,000 to over $100,000 more than identical homes near lower-scoring schools. You are effectively paying a 100 grand surcharge just for a quote-unquote free public school. And to afford that crazy mortgage premium, the second parent absolutely has to work, which triggers the next massive expense.
Let's break down the brutal math of that second income, because this is where it gets wild. Let's take Hazel's $82,000 salary. First up, because her income stacks right on top of Nico's, she gets slammed at a higher effective tax rate, so she loses about $28,000 right there. Then comes daycare, taking another $13,000 on average. Then add in a second car just for her commute, the extra insurance, work expenses. The actual cash from Hazel's $82,000 salary that physically hits the family bank account, it's under $12,000 a year. She is working 40 hours a week, sitting in endless traffic and stressing over schedules, basically netting roughly $8 an hour for all that trouble.
But here's the thing, financial drain isn't the only thing families lost in this modern trade-off.
Back in the 1970s, the stay-at-home partner provided something absolutely crucial that just never showed up on a spreadsheet. They were a financial backup engine. If the primary earner got laid off or sick, the stay-at-home partner could instantly step into the workforce. They were basically a built-in unemployment insurance policy, one with zero premiums and infinite paid time off. They were the ultimate flexible variable that could adapt when life inevitably went sideways. Today, though, with both incomes absolutely required just to cover those massive fixed costs, like that bloated mortgage and the childcare we talked about, modern families are incredibly fragile. There is no backup engine anymore. Both engines are already running at max capacity just to keep the lights on. If Nico loses his job today, the mortgage simply doesn't get paid next month. They literally have double the chances of a job loss or medical emergency hitting a working adult, but absolutely zero reserve capacity to handle it. And the data proves exactly how vulnerable this makes us. Back in 2019, economists linked bankruptcy court records to census data and uncovered a shocking reality. Two-earner couples are actually 10% more likely to file for bankruptcy than otherwise similar single-earner households when a financial shock hits. Why? Because they spent both paychecks on inflated fixed costs. So when the shock arrived, they had literally nowhere to maneuver. The trap snapped shut.
So this is exactly why Nico and Hazel feel so squeezed. Their massive combined income is entirely chewed up by the non-negotiable costs of housing, healthcare, childcare, and education. As a middle-class family with kids, you literally cannot opt out of these four things. These categories ate the entire second paycheck before Hazel even earned it, essentially turning them into conscripted soldiers in a bidding war they never even agreed to fight in the first place.
But listen, there is a way out of this. Let's pivot and build this into an actionable strategy you can use today. Meet Ezra and Lily. They earned the exact same $170,000 as Nico and Hazel, living in the exact same city. But 10 years ago, they made a really radical choice. They completely refused to play the dual income bidding war. When the bank cheerfully offered them a $700,000 mortgage based on both their incomes, they just said no thanks and intentionally bought a $380,000 house instead. They built their entire life around having financial margin.
So Ezra and Lily followed these exact 3 steps to build that margin, and honestly, this is your blueprint. Step 1, size your monthly housing costs to be no more than 28% of one income, ideally the larger one. Step 2, keep your total debt service under 36% of that same single income. Step 3, because your fixed costs are totally covered by the first paycheck, you treat the entire second paycheck, minus a small lifestyle buffer, as an absolute untouchable wealth engine. You basically structure your fixed costs as if you only had one earner in the household.
Now let's look at the incredible contrast in outcomes between these two paths over a 10-year period. On one hand, Nico and Hazel spent both incomes trying to win that bidding war. Now they have $43 left at the end of the month and live in a state of constant low-grade panic. Ezra and Lily, on the other hand, diligently invested Lily's income. Today, they have over $550,000 amassed in index funds, and their house is aggressively paying itself down. In fact, when Lily's job became super toxic last year, she simply quit. She took 6 months off without a single missed payment or a drop of sweat.
But to achieve this outcome, you really have to make a profound psychological shift. And this is the hard part. You have to willingly choose to live in a smaller house or maybe a slightly less prestigious zip code than your combined salary technically qualifies you for. You're going to watch your friends move into these massive houses while you stay put. It requires actively trading social prestige for absolute financial flexibility. You are deliberately stepping out of the arms race. Because at the end of the day, true middle-class wealth isn't defined by your income bracket. It's not the badge on your car, and it's certainly not your home's square footage. It is defined entirely by your margin. Margin is the reserve capacity you have built into your life. It is your ability to absorb a shock, whether that's a layoff, a massive medical bill, a family crisis, without losing everything you've built. The single-income family of 1970 had margin. The modern dual-income family has traded it away for leverage.
So I want to leave you with this provocative thought as we wrap up this explainer. I want you to look at your own household budget tonight and ask yourself honestly, if one of your paychecks just disappeared tomorrow, what would actually happen? Would you have the financial margin to adapt, pivot, and breathe? Or would the trap snap shut? Remember, the way out isn't working harder to earn more. It's refusing to let the bidding war dictate the size of your life.